The Clone Wars is a Star Wars animated series regarded by its fans as some of the best, if not the best, Star Wars content out there. While its critics dismiss it as a kids show. Well, which one is it? Today we're going to figure that out. Hey, Stevie Star Wars here, and today I'm going to help you convert your friends from average Star Wars fans to Clone Wars enthusiasts. I love The Clone Wars. It is my most watched series by a landslide. It's a show that I believe holds merit on its own, while simultaneously adding immense value to the Star Wars universe, specifically the prequel era. Because it's my favorite, I find myself time and time again trying to convince my friends and family and just other Star Wars fans to just watch the show. And let me tell you, that's a struggle. People don't want to watch this show because it's a kids show. We've all heard the sentiment before, but it can't be brushed off because it is a kids show, kind of. It's complicated. Let me explain. The show's an anthology style, so there's these mini series of, 1, 2, 3-part stories that come together and weave into the major story. And as you can imagine, some of them are forgettable and really don't matter at all, and some are as Star Wars can be. There's everything you can imagine, from doofy, prequel, droid humor, just dialed up to 11. It's awful. But on the other end, we have some of the most gnarly arcs with these just dark highlights. Classic children's themes. The show consists of a large array of styles and tones and story, so much so that I just can't fit it all into one video. So I'm just going to try and bullet point it out using the colors that they gave us. In the later seasons, the episodes are very, very occasionally broken into these little sub-classifications based on color: blue, yellow, and red. The 4 blue storylines are where you find yourself watching R2 and his friends go on this quest to help you find the skip button. God, they're awful. I'm sure somebody out there likes them, but I do not. The yellow is the standard storyline. It revolves around the universe we know. It follows the characters that we know while introducing new ones, and ultimately it's the spine of the show. And that makes sense because it's a vast majority of the show. I don't know how many episodes there are, but if there were 100, I would say 90 of them are yellow. And because there's so much of it, it just spans this big spectrum of kiddie garbage all the way up to, oh wow, that's good Star Wars right there. And then red. Ooh, this is the bread and butter. This is Star Wars at its absolute peak. These are the episodes that make you nervous to watch. You're looking over your shoulder, nervous your parents are going to walk in and catch you. And then you remember you're 30 years old and you don't live with your parents anymore, Steve. Anyway, to illustrate my points, I will provide an example of each color and just to summarize it a little bit. But before that, there is one more distinction I'd like to make. Season 1 and 2 are fine. They're great at times, honestly. But they are a far departure from the tonal shift you'll see from 3 to 7. The latter seasons are just grittier. These are the ones I would reference and say, are you sure this is a kid's show? You sure about that? And finally, very quickly, before we move on to the breakdown, if you've made it this far and you're hating it, consider hitting the turbo laser button. That'll help blow up the Death Star where I'm currently located. You can end this. Blue titles. These episodes feature such icons as store brand R2, Johnny One Eye, and of course Squeeb. They do this, and also this, and they also do this. Yeah. So the plot is these 5 droids need to infiltrate enemy lines for a critical mission to retrieve an encryption code to disrupt and prepare for a separative offensive. It's a weird plot line for droids, but it's Star Wars. Crazier things can happen, and I bet these droids are like some sick droids. I bet they're really good at what they do.
So I hear we're gonna be taking out separatists.
Yeah, it's almost like Jar Jar vibes, right? They report to a 9-inch frog thing that hates them.
And some ragtag collection of droids is not going to deny me my destiny.
The droids go off to the guy from Megamind who equips them with upgrades. Very generalized upgrades.
The magnetic force is extremely powerful.
Yep. Episode rolls on, Commander keeps treating the droids like garbage, and I'm guessing the theme is that we're not supposed to see them just as droids. You can't judge a book by its cover. Something like that. Very childish themes that I just can't wait to be done with this part and go on to the yellow episodes. Fast forwarding, One Eye takes charge and goes directly at the target. He says, "Don't worry, I got it," and he gets caught in their tractor beam. But don't you worry, of course, it all works out.
You are Republic droids.
It's just kids' garbage with incompetent characters that just dilute the universe by being accidentally successful. Kind of like this.
I'm trying to. I don't know where the trigger is. Oops.
And also this. See, I can be fair. It's not unfamiliar because George always just built kiddie stuff into the series, most specifically in the prequels. But when it's in episodic form, it's just so hard not to skip them, In a universe that has this, And this. This. It's really hard to enjoy this. So with that, we're just gonna move on to Yellow. Now, Yellow is really hit or miss. Some of these episodes just have the highest midichlorian count you could ever imagine.
The reading is off the chart.
And some...
Where's a Jedi? He's not a Jedi.
Yeah, these plots are expansive. Some of my favorites follow the Siege of Mandalore, the twisted betrayal within the clone army.
Show them you're not the enemy! Look! We close!
And even large-scale massacre. Children themes. There were 2 major episodes I was between for the example here, but I wound up picking one that I think lands in multiple ways. The final scenes are just so thematically perfect. So much so that they just branded into my brain wrinkles. I picked this one because I don't have to rewatch the episode. I could just see it in my head. It's kind of messed up. So the episode opens up. We find ourselves following Asajj Ventress, and she's fleeing to her home planet of Dathomir, rejoining her Night Sisters after Dooku and Asajj find themselves in a disagreement. Mother Talzin, the mother of the Night Sisters, tells Asajj it's time to leave the Sith and rejoin her home. And on Dooku's end, he's tasked Grievous with punishing Asajj by wiping out the entire colony. This is a huge reason I love this episode. Not the murder part, but Grievous. Until the show came out, Grievous was terrifying. He was terrifying in the movies, and even more so in the original Clone Wars animation. He was terrifying. A feared cyborg alien general known for being a metalloid monstrosity. He slayed countless Jedi and he toyed with them before he killed them. He was an animal. But in this show, for the most part, Grievous is just a fool. He flees from battle and he's losing constantly and he talks smack with no reason to. Sometimes he's really cool. But that's rare. Allegedly, he has a terrifying reputation we've all heard about.
You're shorter than I expected.
But you don't get to see it a lot in this show. But in this episode, Grievous is everything we want. So the Seppies arrive on Dathomir and Grievous is ready.
Burn a path through the forest.
The Battle of Dathomir is on and the Night Sisters are getting ready to fight. Their swords and arrows might not do great against the droid army, but they have a couple advantages. They have Asajj, who knows the droids, and then they have the Force magic stuff they do. And as the episode unfolds, you really believe either side can win. The onslaught begins with quick casualties and Asajj is ready to fight. Mother Talzin zaps out a bunch of droids with her witch powers, and then she heads off to Old Dacca to get reinforcements, while Asajj and her crew hold off the droids that they can. The episode is drenched in action. Everything you would want from aesthetics to sick lightsaber action. And in the midst of this, Grievous doubles down.
Send in the defoliator tank. We'll burn those witches to the ground.
We cut back quickly to Mother Talzin, who's in discussion with Old Dacca, who is terrified. And Old Dacca begins resurrecting the army of the dead. An army of zombies and spirits. The Fallen Sisters. As an adult, this is terrifying. As a kid, I can only imagine it's nightmare fuel. The zombies speed off to go reinforce their sisters. And while the Seppies are scorching the planet, the army of the dead arrives and shreds through the B-1 battle droids with ease. And this is where the tide starts to turn. Asajj gets a hold of a tank, they start making progress towards Grievous, and that's eventually where Asajj ends up. And when Asajj gets to Grievous, she challenges him to a one-on-one, and if she wins, he's gotta leave. And while they're dueling, in the background, Mother Talzin is using some voodoo on Dooku to kill him from afar. And back at our lightsaber duel, the matchup's pretty fair, and Grievous is still talking smack whether he's winning or losing. Eventually, Asajj gets the upper hand, and Grievous just commands his B2s to start firing. Just merciless. And right as she's about to get slain, her zombie sisters arrive. Ventress loses another sister in her arms and flees, while Dooku commands Grievous to end this before he dies. And this is where we see Grievous in his greatest form. He just forgets Ventress and just proceeds to shred through the Night Sister army with ease, until he arrives at Old Dacca and just ends her. With Dacca down, the army of the dead falls, and the rest of the sisters are slaughtered. Mother Talzin manages to escape, which in turn saves Dooku, but not before leaving a scorched path on Dathomir. Grievous was operating as a genuine monster, an unstoppable force. That's the Grievous we like. This episode's just gonna stay in my brain forever. The dark aesthetic mixed with the Order 66 vibes of betrayal and slaughter are just equal parts brilliant and also super upsetting. I'm not sure what age I would be comfortable showing my kids this, but they are not ready yet. And finally, we've made it to Red. The moment we've all been waiting for. You ever just think about the resurrection of Darth Maul? Or maybe a Maul and Kenobi reunion? Oh, or what about the fall of characters you've grown to love? Yeah, these episodes go hard. I really want to talk about the finale because it is fantastic. I couldn't do it justice in just a few minutes, so we're gonna roll it back to something I just mentioned, the return of Maul. I honestly think it's the weakest Red episode, but it still manages to be a captivating watch. It's a slower, tension-based narrative that focuses on the story and its implication rather than the action. Plus, it plants the seeds for the greatest episodes of the entire series. The finale. But back to this episode. So this episode follows Savage Opress, who is a guy with a funny name. But we look past that. He's a monster Zabrak male who has two emotions, angry and angrier. Savage is also known for two things, having that goofy name we mentioned before, and being Maul's brother. And the latter is his mission. With the help of the Night Sisters' Mother Talzin, who you know from before, Savage is on a bloodthirsty quest to reunite with his brother. This episode is slower, but it's still a banger of an episode. There's plenty of silence to build the tension in the episode, which gives the viewer some time to think and fill in some gaps. Anakin and Ahsoka come across a body that Savage choked out before, while Savage is persuading a cargo pilot to transport him kindly.
Take me there. Okay.
Upon arriving at the location that Mother Talzin's pendant guides Savage, he thanks the gentleman for his service. Savage gets off the ship and he stumbles across a space snake. The snake is a major part of the middle portion of the story. He seems to be a snake, for a lack of a better word. He gives this uneasy feeling of betrayal, which is good because Savage is bad, right? But the lead up to this point and following Savage's story, you're kind of almost rooting for him. He just wants to be with his brother, you know? Like, who are we to stop him? The snake bargains like Watto, and Savage accepts his bargain.
What you need is a guide.
The snake is a nuisance, genuinely annoying. But he does draw some parallels to like a Lucifer-esque kind of thing. He's persuasive and mischievous, and he's like, oh, why don't you go eat that apple? What could possibly happen? And because of this, it keeps you on your toes as we follow Savage as he fights off multiple trials that he happens to stumble across. Or maybe he was led into. And eventually that feeling that's been brewing finally comes to fruition, and the snake finally pulls the trigger. He absolutely Jabba the Hutt rancors Savage, offers him as tribute to his master. And now you're left with this thought, who's the master? We follow Savage in this tense and ominous walk through the caves. We find ourselves in like a Lord of the Rings-esque kind of scene where we see some spider-like creature stalking Savage. And the tension's building and building until we come to find that the master is, in fact, Maul. But this isn't the same Maul we knew in episode 1. This Maul sank into complete madness. Yes, he's half mechanical spider, which is a hard pill to swallow at first, I'll admit. But it's short-lived as he gets the Vader treatment and gets a nice makeover. Episode wraps up in this beautiful, quiet scene of Obi-Wan and Yoda sensing a disturbance in the Force and coming to realize that it's Maul and he's returned. For a prequel lover, for an Obi-Wan lover, for a Star Wars lover, this is so cool. The man that killed Qui-Gon, Liam Neeson, the man that forced Obi-Wan into training Anakin, ultimately leading to Darth Vader's creation, that man is back, and we get to reopen all those old wounds again. I couldn't possibly do it any justice just by describing it, so if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, man, you gotta. I digress. We've seen everything from
Taking out separatists
to
I must have revenge.
the show genuinely has some gems from the get, except for the movie. We don't talk about the movie. But for the casual viewer that doesn't know this is an anthology-styled show that bounces between stories, characters, and time, it becomes very apparent why some viewers might not enjoy or even understand what's going on. In an effort to convert everyone to the Clone Wars side, some lovely internet folks have made lists of the best and most important episodes to view so they can experience just the very best. I really think if you're trying to convince somebody, utilize these lists. Trim the fat, show them the good stuff, get them hooked, and then once they're hooked, they'll have no choice but to join us on our endless Star Wars viewing journey where we fall in love with the clones more than we ever thought we could, and also breaking our hearts more when Order 66 happens. After this series, Order 66 hurts a lot more. So what's the answer? Is this a kids show? At times, yes. But I wouldn't let my kids watch it. Not yet. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, hit the like and subscribe button. That's going to let me know that you want me to make more Clone Wars content.
Do it.
And if we haven't converted you to the Clone Wars yet, don't worry. There's plenty of other Star Wars content coming your way. Once again, thank you for watching, and until next time.